You all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? For the first time, what brings you here? Welcome. What brings you here?
I like to learn the Buddhist ways. I have been reading and such, and I'm visiting my sister from Oregon.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Well, welcome. A lot of Buddhist stuff up in Oregon. Have you looked?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you gone? Have you gone to places yet?
No.
No. I've never been to Oregon. I don't know it all that well, but I know there's an Oregon Zen Center that's relatively, I wouldn't say famous, but pretty well known. Portland has a lot of stuff, but yeah, it's a great place for Buddhist practice.
It is.
What have you learned from the Buddhist ways so far?
Oh my goodness, you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah, that's why I get your hands in the air, and then you're only here once visiting, so we might as well do it now, right?
Well, I mean, what I have learned and what I like is that it's not, it's more spiritual than following rules and disciplines, and it's not about how much you have here. It's not about the name brand. It's not about any of that.
Yeah.
Properties and stuff. It's about spirituality.
Nice. Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing. And the other gentleman with his first time, what brings you here? Yep. Yeah.
I'm kind of new to this place. I moved from East Coast, Boston.
Yeah.
I was looking for some places for meditation.
Nice. Yeah. Well, welcome. Yeah, San Diego, especially if you're newer to here. I mean, you could literally, which is probably how you found this, but you could put in meditation or Buddhism San Diego. There's like 30 places within 10 miles of here. It's really phenomenal. And I always encourage people to go to all of them, check them out, see what speaks to you. And, for most, I've found over the years, people and places, you kind of, when you show up somewhere, like, hey, am I comfortable here? Am I not comfortable? Does this feel right? Do they want me to do weird stuff? You kind of figure that out on your own. We don't make you do weird stuff till like your third visit. So by that time, you're already hooked in, and then we have you do all kinds of weird stuff. But yeah, it's really kind of cool to see, to be in a place that has so much practice going on, meditation, Buddhist practice, Hindu practices, really a lot of wonderful ways to kind of engage on some sort of spiritual journey that might be different from what you're used to, or many people show up at a place like this, haven't ever been on some sort of spiritual journey. So it's really a good opportunity to kind of explore and see what's out there. So anyways, those who keep showing up, why do you keep showing up?
I make more progress when I show up and I try to do it all on my own. It helps meeting other people and exchanging. It really helps.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. What else? Why keep showing up?
I think I'm becoming a slightly better person.
Slightly.
And God knows I need the.
Yes. Well, I'll just, so you've become a slightly better person and God knows you need it, huh? That's like my Suzuki Roshi quote where he says, you're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use just a little improvement. So yours is the other way around? Yeah. Keep going. What else? Why show up? Yeah.
I need rules and structure.
Rules and structure. Yeah. It's actually funny. I wasn't going to comment on it because, it's only your first time here. When you go back to Oregon? Okay. So it could be first and last time here. So I was going to let that go. But what you just said is almost in complete opposition to the comment in the back, which is you need rules and structure. And it's so funny because so many people come into Buddhist practice for that exact reason, right? It seems to be without rules, without discipline, without structure, without those things. So people are like, well, I'm going to explore my spirituality on my own, in my own comfort level. And then you come into Buddhism and you eventually realize, like, yes, the Buddha himself had 227 to 311 precepts that the monks and nuns had to follow. Now, the challenge is, if they broke these precepts, if they went against their kind of moral, ethical conduct and behavior, if they lacked discipline, they weren't like, going to hell. It was a reflection of what they did probably caused a lot of problems and chaos in their lives. And so when we look at discipline, when we look at structure, which is in Buddhism from its core, and I've talked about that a lot recently, there's so much discipline and structure in Buddhist practice, but the discipline and structure is around our own moral, ethical conduct and behavior, not because somebody else said we must be some certain way or this will happen to you. We are our own proof, right? Anyone in here ever spent a lot of time lying, harming, stealing, getting really wasted and high and used lots of intoxicants and committed sexual misconduct? Anyone in here done? Really? Come on. One of those was no lying. So all of you didn't put your hands up, a bunch of liars, right? But the reality is when we do those things, we cause harm. And the very foundation of Buddhist teachings is to have loving kindness and compassion so we don't cause harm. So eventually you will come across the fact that there is precepts and structure and discipline in Buddhist practice, but it's to make our life and the life of those around us kinder and gentler people. And, I can only speak for myself, but when I do all those things less, I suffer less and other people suffer less. And when I don't do those things, the practice then is also to have tremendous compassion for ourselves, because if we begin to judge ourselves by these standards, it's over, right? Then we just feel like a failure. And it's the reason so many people show up to Buddhism in this day and age anyways, is because they feel like they're not good enough in the eyes of someone else or something else. So this isn't about being good in the eyes of someone or something else. It's about recognizing how do we feel and have a kinder, gentler view of ourselves, and how do we share that kinder, gentler view of ourselves with other people? And can we create a more compassionate way of life for those around us? So, all right. So with that, we'll start with a meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. And there's a chat box somewhere on your screen. A couple things I'll tell you before we begin, for those who might be sitting for the first time. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos, not escaping from it. You're not trying to stop your mind. You're not going to think nothing. It's not going to go blank. Your mind will continue to wander and race. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means you need to move. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, and compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get every day. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, challenges. That's what we get. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of your life that's a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. You can make changes in your life. Because ultimately, that's what this practice is. It's about making changes in your life. Because if we don't make changes in our life, then, well, nothing changes. So Buddhist practice, meditation, isn't even about Buddhism or meditation. It's about you. It's a recognition of your own karma. The word karma literally means action. The Buddha taught we generate karma 3 ways: body, speech, mind. So the entire foundation of this practice is an awareness of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And how what you think, what you say, and what you do impacts your life and the life of those around you. That's why when we begin to explore meditation and Buddhist practice, we often think that it's about learning about something else or someone else. We're not trying to be like the Buddha. He died 2,500 years ago. He cannot help you at all. You're on your own, folks. And that can be really scary or really liberating. Depends on how you look at it. For me as a practitioner, knowing that I am 100% responsible for my misery and 100% responsible for my joy, I like that. What I didn't like was thinking that my happiness, my joy, me being at peace was contingent upon something or someone else. Knowing that all of that is contingent upon what I think, what I say, and what I do, I like that. Now, that doesn't mean that the world is going to ever start doing what you want it to. In case you haven't figured that out by now, the world doesn't respond the way you want the world to respond. And this practice isn't about getting other people to do things. In fact, very often, early on in meditation and Buddhist practice, there's what I like to call Buddhist arrogance, where you ever started this practice and been at it for all of 3 weeks, and then you start judging everybody else for doing things you were doing 3.5 weeks ago, right? Just because you meditate and read about compassion and the Dalai Lama and Pema Chodron doesn't make you better than anybody else. It just means you're working on your own stuff. And very often when we work on our own stuff, we tend to use that and think, well, they're not working on their stuff. And that's a moment to realize this isn't about what other people are working on. This is about what are you working on? And that's why it's so difficult. Because what many of us are used to is thinking that something, somewhere, some way else is going to bring us happiness and joy and peace. This is a mirror. That's all this practice is. It's a mirror reflecting back on your actions. And to me, I think Buddhist practice is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my entire life. Absolutely. But also incredibly beneficial because anger and depression and misery suck. Not that any of you have ever experienced any of that, but that's no way to live. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, say, and do, and working on being kinder and gentler to yourself and everybody else. And that just repeats day in and day out. I'm convinced 1 hour of Google searches will teach you everything you will ever need to know about Buddhist practice. And then you get to spend the rest of your life, every single moment, trying to do it. And it's really tough. But you just have to go out and be nice to everybody you encounter today, all day long. You can do that, right? So easy. Just be nice to people. I still believe everything the Buddha taught, most of us learned by the time we were 5 years old. The challenge is, can we do it? And that's where it's hard. Because we tend to build our lives and reach a place in our lives where we think our views are what?
Right.
Right. And if we think our views are right, that means everybody else's views are what? Wrong. So good luck with that. With that, I'll pause. For me, I always really prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this morning for questions. Again, to those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you. We've got somebody joining us from however many thousands of feet American Airlines flies. They are joining us from the air. So that's kind of fun. So hope you're having a good flight.
Is that a pilot or a passenger?
Yeah, I'm kind of afraid to ask. The question was, are you a pilot or a passenger? So feel free. I mean, a pilot, they're kind of on cruise control anyways, right? I mean, yeah. So, well, we'll see if they get back to me. I don't know. So we'll open up to questions. Yeah.
I'm becoming aware of pattern I have of either dissociating or running.
Mm.
So I've done most of my life, and it doesn't solve anything. Often it just makes things a whole lot worse for me.
Yeah.
So that I don't want to do that anymore. I know there's the Four Noble Truths, and the way to get out of that is the Eightfold Path.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the Eightfold Path, but there's 6 Paramitas. I'm like confused. Where do I start? How do I work with all of it? Because it just feels like a whole lot of.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
It's a whole lot.
Yeah.
But it's really not.
Okay.
I mean, it's so let me just paraphrase the question for those who didn't hear it. Question is around just sharing how you're realizing that when you have problems arise in your life, you disassociate and run, and you realize that that's just creating, for the most part, more problems. And so, as you said, you realize the Buddhist teachings around the Four Noble Truths, and there's the Eightfold Path, and that's how you kind of get through to stop running. In essence, you didn't say that, but and then you said, but then there's also the 6 Paramitas. So it seems like so much. So where do you start? Right. So let me just back up in like 2 minutes just to kind of sum up for those who aren't familiar. Four Noble Truths, first thing the Buddha taught. said life is filled with dukkha. Translates to suffering. Suffering is a terrible translation because it makes it sound so heavy and traumatic. Yes, we all experience suffering in our lives, and we all have trauma we've probably experienced in our lives, and some of it was very heavy and very painful. But dukkha is also discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, things that don't go your way. And we experience, I've found for the most part, we experience levels of dukkha all day long that are not the heavy traumatic stuff. We've experienced heavy traumatic things in our lives, but those things are not usually what occurs all day long that drive us crazy. It's the sandwich that wasn't made the right way. It's the latte that wasn't made the right way. It's the traffic not going how you want it to. It's you not liking the way you look in a certain shirt, or you don't like the way your hair looks today, or whatever it is. Somebody looked at you the wrong way. Those little things, discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction, right? That's what's happening all day long. So the Buddha said our entire life is going to be filled with those moments. The second thing he says is, what's the cause of that? And this is known as the three poisons: greed or craving, desire, anger, and ignorance. And so we constantly want more. We're angry at the way things are, and we're ignoring reality, meaning we think our reality is correct, right? So we overcome greed with generosity, anger with compassion, and ignorance with wisdom. The third noble truth is the good news, the ending of suffering, right? Liberation, freedom, yay. And the fourth is the path. And this is part of your question. This Eightfold Path, having correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. Then you added the Paramitas. The Paramitas are Bodhisattva practices. Bodhisattva translates to enlightened being, of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. This Bodhisattva here, Samantabhadra, the elephant's six tusks represent the six Paramitas. The practice of the Paramitas are the practices used to go from a world of suffering to a world that is free from suffering. Again, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom. So your question is, where do you even begin, right? There's a lot of crossover between them if we break them down. And without breaking them all down, very simply, the first one is a correct view of the Eightfold Path. Now, as a kind of an extreme example, when you woke up this morning, and did you at some point realize you were hungry, you wanted breakfast? Yeah. And at that moment, did you think how many millions of people in the world are also hungry and don't have breakfast? Or did you just make sure you had breakfast?
Make sure I have some.
You had to make sure breakfast. So your view was that you were more important than everybody else.
Yeah, probably that I was the only person that mattered.
The only person that mattered. And this is not, for those who've never heard this stuff, this does not say that you should ignore yourself and that you don't matter. Yes, we must feed ourselves so we can also feed others. But at the same time, we spend most of our day thinking, who is the center of the universe?
I am.
You are. Which is crazy because everybody else in here is the center of the universe. So how could you also be the center of the universe, right? So no offense to those who don't think they're the center of the universe. So we roam around all day long thinking that we are most important. Our view starts there. So the correct view for me as a practice is to recognize that everybody else is at the very least equally as important as I am. When I have the view that I am most important, the second one is thoughts. So view, thought, speech, action, right? What am I always talking about with karma? What we think, what we say, and what we do. So the second, third, and fourth on the Eightfold Path is views, thoughts, and actions. What we think, what we say, and what we do. When we think we are more important than everybody else, what are our thoughts going to be that follow that?
What's good for me?
What's good for me? And when we think what's good for me, what are we then going to say?
From my perspective, what works for me?
Correct. From my perspective, what works for me. So once we've thought that and we've said that, then what are we going to do?
Action in line with.
The action will be in, I'm just repeating this for those virtually within the back who didn't hear. The action is in line then with our thoughts and our words, which say, what can feed me? So much of our day is spent around making sure I get what I want and what I need. That's where it begins. Okay. Now I'll jump for a minute since you brought in the Paramitas. And even in the way you asked your question, it's pretty simple. The first Paramita, now the Eightfold Path to me was always taught to go in order, right? If your view is all about me, and mine, then everything is going to follow. Let me finish this thought for a minute. Last on the Eightfold Path is view, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. So where is our mindful meditation practice on the Eightfold Path?
Towards the end.
Not towards the end, the end.
The end, right.
It is the end, right? Now, what do most people come into to Buddhist and spiritual practice for?
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness and meditation, right? As Karmalekshi Soma used to say, an angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator. It's actually really funny. I just posted this morning. I'll paraphrase it for the, to keep it friendly. But John Daido Loori, who's a great Zen teacher, he shared, there's a quote, he says, those who think Buddhism is just about stillness end up sitting very silently up to their necks in their own stuff. So we often come into Buddhism thinking, I'm just going to be still, I'm going to meditate. But if we spend all day long treating people like crap, then we're just still people who meditate and treat people like crap. So the first paramita is generosity. Generosity, give our time, give our attention, give compassion, give love, give a smile, give a hug. There's so many things that we can give. When we give, what is the giving all about? Others. Now, when our first view is about us, but then the paramita of giving says make it about other people, right there. So for me as a practice, it's to begin to look at throughout your day, how much time do you spend, not to answer this, but just to ponder this throughout your day. How much time in your day do you spend focused on making sure you get what you want and that everybody tells you what you want to hear and everybody does what you want them to do? Every conflict is because people aren't doing what we want. This isn't about what the conflict is, whether it's right or wrong or good or bad. This is recognizing why we're suffering. We're suffering because we're not getting what we want. We have a craving and a desire. We are being greedy with what we want. Now, the follow-up comment to question to that, people always say is, well, what's wrong with wanting kindness? There's nothing wrong with wanting kindness. There's nothing wrong with wanting your loved one or a friend or a family member to treat you well. It's not about what's wrong with these things. The practice is, why am I suffering? I'm suffering because I want people to treat me a certain way. That's okay. Just understand that if you want people to treat you a certain way and they don't, now you're mad because they're treating you poorly, and you're mad because you're not getting treated how you want to be treated. So you're mad twice over one thing. We have an idea of how we want people to treat us all day long. And I think that's relatively healthy, because if we don't get treated how we want, then we can easily, sometimes not easily, but we can remove ourselves from situations. So again, it's not about not caring how people treat us. It's important, but not being attached to it and not trying to control how others treat, just how others are. And again, that's the teaching of non-attachment. I will love them regardless of who and how they are. Not easy. We often love people based on what they do for us. You know? Definitely a passenger. OMG, definitely a passenger. Ha ha ha. Thanks for the laugh. Flying back to San Diego. So, what else? Questions? Yeah.
This will probably be a little easier to answer than the last one. So a day or so ago, you posted something, and I was like, well, I can ponder this, and I can Google it, but since I was coming here, I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah.
There was a really cool photo, as you've been posting a lot with the garden.
Oh, yeah.
And it was of the boulder, and it said, be a boulder.
Oh, yeah. Be a
I
boulder.
wanted to expand on that.
Yeah.
Rather than my mind going in directions that may not be
Yeah.
helpful.
So the question, for those who didn't hear virtually, was I had shared something the other day, a picture of the Zen garden and focus on the boulder. And I said, be a boulder. And so your question was, instead of Googling it and whatever, you would wait to ask me so I could share it, which is great, because I just said this late yesterday before the class last night to somebody for the first time. It's been fascinating to me to see, for those who don't know, we, spent 2.5 months building the new Zen garden outside. It was just a pile of dirt for 8 years because we knew that was coming eventually. And now it's here. So endless gratitude for everybody who made that happen. But what's fascinating to me is it's very much like, we started this temple 18 years ago. And for 18 years, Buddhist temples, especially for Western people that weren't raised in them, they're funny things to people. Like, they don't know how to respond. They don't know what to do, right? They walk up to shrines. They think everything's like a toy. I think about growing up in a Jewish temple, if I would have gone up to the altar or the shrine or the bima, as we called it, or if you're at church, what do they call it? Church? What do they? altar, right? Like, would you walk up and just start playing with stuff if you were? No. But Buddhist temples, people do that stuff. And part of me thinks it's cute and funny, and part of me is like, you don't play with stuff. But that's my practice, right? So the Zen garden has been fascinating because it's kind of like a little microcosm of a Buddhist temple, because people don't know what to do with it. The rake was there and everybody's like, well, I'm just going to rake shit. Like, people don't want to just sit. When you sit and you just have nothing but white sand and boulders, like, that's it. It is Zen practice. I'll get to the boulder in a minute. When you have nothing but white sand and boulders, what are you left with? Yourself. What are people running from most of their lives? Themselves. So here we have this space out front. This is the part I love, and I'm so serious. Like, there's no frustration, no irritation, no annoyance. I think it's cute and humorous that the hardest thing people have, the biggest challenge people have with a space like that is like, oh no, there's nothing for me to do. You mean I have to just sit down and be with myself? Yes, that's the practice. So the sand, the lines, the waves, right? You'll see various translation of it. You can Google all this stuff and you'll see like 15 different, translations of it. But the general idea of the sand and the lines is like waves. And it teaches us a lot of metaphors in Buddhism around ocean waves, because the oceans come crashing in, the waves come crashing in, and then they go back out to sea. And the ocean water is always what? Moving. And always what? Changing. And what is this teaching in Buddhism? Impermanence. So the sand represents, in most Zen kind of garden experiences in Japan and throughout the world, impermanence. One of the biggest things that a lot of people who come into Buddhism struggle with. Now, when we're in a really sad, angry, depressed mood, what do we love? Impermanence, because that'll go away. When we're really happy and things go wrong, we don't like impermanence because we want the happiness to stay forever. But the impermanence teaches us that everything, as the Buddha said, all conditioned phenomena come together for a period of time and then cease to exist. Anyone ever seen the mandalas? It's beautiful, like when the Tibetan lamas, they paint the sand mandalas. And then what do they do after it's painted? They spend like weeks on this stuff. And then they just destroy it, right? To show the impermanent nature of all phenomena. Now we get attached to what? Physical beauty. How much time do we spend making sure our face looks okay, our hair looks okay, our teeth looks okay, We spend so much time focused on the outside. But what Buddhist practice is teaching us is to focus where? On the inside, because that's what makes a difference, right? So the impermanent nature of all phenomena is the sand. Then you have the moss, right? Moss really represents, in some regards, this idea of timelessness, but to me also kind of translated as the practice of patience. That if there is endless amounts of time, then what's the hurry? We're always in such a rush. Even if you look at the time of the Buddha, as you've heard me share many times, the Buddha taught at a time where everybody believed in a rebirth, a reincarnation, or continuation of consciousness. Yet here we are at whatever age in this one life, and we're like, I better end my suffering before I turn whatever age, right? We got endless time. This is just one long, endless continuation of consciousness. Alaya Vijnana, as they called it. Again, for those who are new to Buddhism, at the time of the Buddha, they all believed in rebirth, the reincarnation, and continuation of consciousness. At that time, one life and then heaven or hell was like ridiculous. You go up to people today and you say you're going to be reborn, and they're like, huh? Right? So he taught 500 years before Christ, where the view of the universe was very different than what it is today. So when he was teaching, he wasn't teaching to make sure that we all figured this stuff out in like 6 months. But for us, if we do meditation and Buddhist practice for 2 years and we're like, this stuff's not working, right? Endless time. So the moss that often sits under boulders in a Zen garden represents patience. To me, timelessness, patience, right? And then the question is, be a boulder. Boulder and mountain is often what the boulders represent. The boulders are mountains, right? And rain, hail, thunderstorm, people trekking on them. You got these massive mountains. They're just not phased, right? And so for me, watering the moss out there, you see the water hit the boulder. What happens to the boulder? Nothing. It's just there. It doesn't matter if you stand on it, if you sit on it, if you kick it, if you punch it, if you, whatever you do to the boulder, it's a boulder. Nothing harms it. How easily are we harmed? So easy. I mean, one little glance and all of a sudden, like 6 days of our lives have been, shattered with anger because somebody we don't know on the freeway, like, got in front of us, So the boulder, to me, is the Buddhist teachings of equanimity. So you have the 4 Brahma Viharas: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So to be steady and stable as a mountain, as a boulder, with regardless of what's coming at you. And again, for those who are new to Buddhism, this doesn't mean that we sit in a place of privilege and ignore all the pain and suffering in the world. The world is a mess. And we should, I believe, as practitioners, we should engage in the world and do everything we can to make the world a kinder, gentler place. But when you're engaging in the world to make it a kinder, gentler place, be the boulder, engage in the world where you are not a mess. Just because the world is a mess doesn't mean you have to be. So as we're pointing fingers and blaming everybody else for everything they're doing, how are we? So be the boulder. Yeah. Thanks for the question. What else? Oh, you're welcome, Joe. And hi, Eric. If I didn't give him a shout out, he'd get mad. He's in Massachusetts. Questions? There's a question here. Hi, Jeff. Been thinking about self-respect. Without a self in Buddhism, what are the Buddhist thoughts on self-respect? Compassion and respect towards self if there is no self. Thoughts? Yeah, so that's that's kind of the common dilemma is the Buddha taught non-self. And then this question of, well, if there's no self, then who is angry, who is happy, who is joyful, who is sad? How do we have self-respect? These types of things. I think it's important to understand that if you just think of the phrase non-self literally, it can sound as if you don't exist, as if you're not there. And that's not what non-self is, right? Non-self, to me, the way I explain it and the way I practice it and the way I understand it is that I am here, but I'm here completely differently from how I perceive myself to be. I have a view of myself. That view is not correct. You all have a view of me. That view is not correct. We have judgments of ourselves. Those views are not correct. I've done terrible things in my life in the past, and I've done wonderful things in my life in the past. Those are not me. Those are things I've done. Those are experiences. Those are moment-to-moment interactions. So non-self means I'm not going to put a box or a label around me and say, this is who I am. There is no permanent self. Meaning, just like the waves, just like the sand in the garden, we are always changing. Every moment, our consciousness is changing. With every thought, every breath, every word, our consciousness has forever been changed. So we are not these permanent beings. Anyone in here spent 40 years of your life telling you what a piece of whatever you are? Ever spent time telling yourself what a wonderful person you are? Right? Whatever our view is of ourselves, that is not who you are. Those are just perceptions you are carrying about yourself. And sadly enough, we've had plenty of reinforcement of that over the years. If a few people don't like you for something you've done and you build on that and you tell yourself that and you start to believe that, then you start to project that, then more and more people tell you that, and you get stuck in this vicious cycle of telling yourself you're not good enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough. That's not even you. These are just stories. So non-self means to me that we exist physically, mentally, emotionally, I'm here, but very differently from how I perceive myself, as well as very differently from how everybody else perceives me, right? With that regard, as Dogen, the Zen master, would say, you must get to know the self before you can get rid of the self. So pretty confident saying that none of us abide in a place of non-self 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So since we are still stuck with this sense of self that we are attached to, be nice to it. That sense of self that you're telling yourself you are, why not spend all day long? I joked about this a few weeks back. I was saying, hey, next time that you go to therapy, Sit down with your therapist and spend 55 minutes telling your therapist how wonderful you are. Tell them all the good things you did that week. Tell them all the good things that happened to you that week. Tell them everything that's exciting in your life. Most people don't go to therapy for that, right? I mean, your therapist will think there's definitely something wrong with you for sure. But the idea is, why are we stuck? If we're going to be stuck telling a story to ourselves about who we think we are, at the very least, back to the question about self-respect, then, I mean, so many people, and this is just obviously all my perception, my perspectives, but so many people talk so harshly to themselves, much worse than they would ever talk to anybody else. I mean, I know from my, 30 years of misery and depression, the things I would tell myself about myself, I would never say those things to somebody else. Never. Yet I would tell myself that. So to me, self-respect, self-love, self-compassion, your question around where does that fit into Buddhism? It's not just this literal, there is no self, though you can't have self-respect. Please have self-respect. If we don't have self-love, self-respect, self-compassion, then it's going to be nearly impossible to truly cultivate that for others. The more we love and have compassion and kindness and respect towards ourselves, the easier it's going to be to have that towards others. When we are angry and we hate ourselves and we tell ourselves terrible things about ourselves, and then we try to be nice to people, that's really difficult. But if you're coming from a place of love and compassion, then it's a lot easier to act from a place of love and compassion. So, what else? We'll do one more before we close. Yeah.
Question about Dharma.
Yeah.
I'm more familiar with the Hindu definition, but it seems like the Buddhist definition is pretty different.
Yeah. So the question is around the term Dharma, and you said you're more familiar with from the Hindu teachings and not as much from the Buddhist teachings. So in Buddhism, and I'll close with this thought, Dharma is often kind of translated two different ways, right, in general. One is Dharma as like ultimate reality, things as they are. There's a name for the Buddha called Tathagata, which is suchness, things as they are. So ultimate Dharma, ultimate truth, it's important to understand it's not truth spoken by the Buddha. Again, he was just a guy, wasn't a god. He lived 80 years and he died. So it wasn't, what he was speaking was not reality. He was speaking his perception of reality. And what I believe he wanted us to see, I just think he was a brilliant dude who understood the way the mind worked, was he wanted us to see that there is ultimate truth, and then there's our perception, or ultimate reality, and then there's our perception of reality. And when we look at something, we think what we see is actually correct. But 10 of us could look at the same thing. We all would perceive it differently, right? Have you seen my Buddhist magic trick yet? No. All right. If you've seen this trick, you're not allowed to be involved. All right. You've seen this trick. So don't give them the answer. So what is this? You see it? A bowl? What else? You can all play along if you haven't seen this trick. A bell? What else? A cup? A bell, a bowl, a cup. What is it now? It's a hat. You all agree it's a hat? Now what if I put cereal, if I put Lucky Charms in it and I start eating from it? Now it's a bowl again. Did this change at all? No. So ultimate reality is this is just whatever it is. How we view it and label it and define it and use it ultimately is what it is to us. Everything in our life is that way, including, coming back to my earlier comments, ourself. So we are just whatever this is, this physical form body with a brain and consciousness. And then however we use that, define that, label that, we call that ourselves. I call that Jeff because people gave me that name. But that's not who I am. I'm no different than this, right? So that's ultimate Dharma. The other way to look at Dharma is simply the teachings of the Buddha. So at the beginning, when we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the Dharma is literally the teaching. So everything that the Buddha taught, Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, as he taught for 45 years before he died at 80, what he was teaching was referred to as the Dharma. And it originally got written down in what's called sutras. Well, initially it was memorized, it was an oral transmission of the teaching. So they memorized everything and then eventually came together after the Buddha passed and said something to the effect of, this is some good stuff. We should probably write it down. I'm sure those were not their exact words, but it was something like that. And they began to transcribe it on the palm leaves. And those became what they called sutras. And sutra, like suture, means thread. So the sutras, which is the teachings, they include the Dharma, which are the teachings. So ultimate reality and literally what the Buddha taught. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, before y'all head out, our host Ann has some announcements for us. Oh, and as Ann is coming up, we are looking for, if anybody wants to host I'll find it. Go ahead, sorry.
Hello, everyone. I'm today's host. My name is Anne. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shura. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Ann. And one last announcement. I was just checking Tiffany's note, who manages all our morning and noon meditation leaders. We're looking for a Friday at noon host for our noon to 1 meditation. So what that means is you come about 5 minutes early before noon, open the door so it gives you access to the temple. You can break in and steal everything. Hit the bell from 12 to 12:25. It's a silent meditation that repeats from 12:30 to 12:55. So you're not leading a class. You don't need to know anything other than how to hit a bell, and we can train you on that. So we're looking for a new Friday at noon person. And also, I'm pretty sure we're still looking for some Buddha for You volunteers. So if anybody wants to volunteer at Buddha for You, check in with Maggie downstairs. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Go Cubs.
We got to check the score. I was actually watching the